Hello, mere mortals, and welcome to the Pedal Head Show.
I'm Benny G, your one and only host. I'll be showing you guys this awesome made in Japan Boss HM2.
Heavy metal.
If this is your first time to my channel, please hit like, consider subscribing, and please hit that notification bell so you stay up to date with all my content that I bring out. So we're looking at this awesome Boss HM2. This pedal came out in 1983. This is one of the first HM2s that came out due to its serial number that came out in November of 1983. I'm playing through my Helix, my Line 6 Helix. I have the HM2 in an effects loop. It's the first thing that goes into a couple other Boss pedals, but that's how you're supposed to hear Boss pedals, in line with more Boss pedals. So the HM2 is a mixture of an op-amp distortion, a soft clipping distortion, and a hard clipping distortion. We got the op-amp distortion, then we have an asymmetrical soft clip, and then two germanium diodes to ground to give you all the range of distortion. It's kind of a mixture between a DS1, SD1, Big Muff, and everything in between. It's supposed to replicate a Marshall JCM 800, or at least give your amp the push and feel, even if you're playing through a solid state. I'm playing with my Stratocaster. I got a humbucker in the bridge, two single coils. It's a Squier classic vibe, but it's got Fender Fat 50s in the neck and a hot rail in the bridge. We're going to turn everything up on 10 on the guitar. So I'm going to show you guys my clean signal. Drop D for
Death metal.
We're going to turn off the reverb. We're going to activate the effects loop. And here we go. Neck pickup. So rarely will you ever see a Boss HM2 with all of the knobs at 12 o'clock. I just put it there for a good reference. As you guys hear, there is a little bit of a sufficient volume drop. So in this video, I'll be modifying this awesome Boss HM2 to give it first new electrolytic capacitors to breathe new life in this zombie of heavy metal. And then I'm going to be switching out a couple resistors and a few capacitors to basically address a few problems I have with this pedal. And number one, that it doesn't have enough output. Number two, we all know that the gain knob doesn't do much past 9 o'clock. So I'll be showing you guys how you can get a little more control from your heavy metal for a few more modern applications. Also, as we hear, there's a lot of background noise. Sounds like an old static TV. Am I right, guys? So I'll also be addressing the noise problem because it has a pretty bad noise floor, but with all that clipping and distortion going around, you'd expect there would be a pretty high noise floor. I'm not going to address too much with the EQs because the EQs, as said by DIY stomp boxes or DIY pedals, if you mess with the EQ section, you're really not going to be doing much besides, cutting out any of the mids that aren't there to give you that, cool modern mid scoop sound. And this is usually how you should run your Boss HM2. So let's hear that. So all you HM2 purists can get what you really came for. You want this HM2 at full throttle. You don't care if it doesn't sound good or nothing. This is called the chainsaw sound, used by a lot of death metal. Now, I'm more about life metal. I like to be alive in order to enjoy metal, because metal is metal. Put the pedal to the metal, right, guys? All right, now no problem with the volume there. I am clipping my signal. Hold on. Now, if you're pushing that into a analog tube amp or whatever, sure, it's going to sound great. But I'm going through the Line 6 Helix into Logic, and I'm clipping my signal so bad that I have to dial it back. So for all you purists out there, I'm sorry, okay? All right, now, I know it's blasphemy, I know. Now, if that wasn't like noise, I don't know what was. But, I'll show you guys how I usually apply this HM2 heavy metal. I like a little bit more bass presence for that good push. Dial back on those highs because no one needs those highs. I ain't about that. And I dial back the distortion to give some control. But after these mods that we're going to do, we'll have even more control. All right? So even at that higher, 3 o'clock range on the level knob, it feels like it's below unity. It just feels like it's below. So I know we got a lot more level output when we cranked all the knobs to the chainsaw sound. But honestly, my YouTube channel is about playing with awesome circuits, making them sound better, discovering new things. Maybe it might make it sound worse. We don't know, guys. So here's the last example before the mod. I got a Tube Screamer style pedal, and I also got a Klon Centaur style pedal going into full heavy metal mode. Here we go. Crank on that reverb. That's just the HM2 by itself. And I know we'll get to the mods right away. Hold your horses. You can just skip this. It's up to you. I'll have markers so you can skip this, but I just want to play a little bit of drop beat. Drop beat for
Big Guys at the Pedalhead Show.
And as we hear, we want to silence those goblins. Am I right, guys? So let's take this awesome Boss HM2 made from 1983, made in Japan. Let's take it to the soldering bench and do some cool work. And I'll have all the mods in the description below and on the screen for you guys to follow. Here we go. back, mortals. So I was able to switch out the electrolytics for fresh new electrolytics and a few film capacitors in place. Now, this pedal has a few capacitors glued together, which made it very, say, difficult to take off from the board and strip the adhesive from component to component. I had to switch out C1 for a new film capacitor. That's a 473 0.043 microfarad. And I was able to change out two other capacitors to film. They're both 1 microfarad capacitors with 50 volts minimum. Both of these film capacitors that I replaced with had about 100 volt voltage maximum, so we're more than safe there. And when you switch from electrolytic to film, you actually lower the noise floor immensely. So let's give you an idea here of the noise floor. I have the settings to about the same. That's not that much. That's really not that much. Let's hear how much gain we have when we play. And that's pretty inaudible noise in my opinion. Now, you can also change the electrolytics for high-end audio grade gold electrolytic capacitors if you want to take a step further. But for right now, switching out all of them and swapping out two electrolytics for film, the noise floor is a lot lower. And I also find that the bypass signal sounds way better. Because as you know, Boss pedals are all buffered bypass. And you're going through all those electrolytics and circuits while it's off. So if you have fresh new electrolytics, you have a fresh new circuit, you have fresh new buffers. So here's our clean tone. So here's our buffered bypass signal. I hear a little more low end. We are going through 3 Boss pedals. Like I said, if you're playing any Boss pedals, you have a line of them. You don't just have one. So the meg impedance of the heavy metal HM2 input is 1 meg, and the output is around 3K. So it's a little too high. You usually want to shoot for about 1K for the output impedance. I'll have a future video about how to fix your Boss pedals and make their impedance to the standard professional equations of 1 meg input impedance and 1K low output impedance. But I find the HM2's bypass signal is a lot more clearer and sounds a lot better. But you don't want to hear that. You want to hear the HM2. Here we go. All right, time for some Chainsaw. Dial it back, Benny. Dial it back. So what I find, as we hear with the distortion up and the high end up, there's still a little bit of that shh, right? But what do you expect when the highs are already on? So if I dial it back to about, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it's a little more subtle. And we have the distortion all the way up. Let's dial that back too. Whoa, the distortion knob does something on the HM2. It's never been heard of ever. Obviously, the bass is cranked, so you get a little more like woofiness, kind of like if you put the mic on a speaker cabinet a little too much in the corners, So the modifications I have left on the HM2 are going to be boosting the output so we have a little more control over that level, because if you hear with the level knob at 12 o'clock, it's not really unity gain, and you don't get a boost either. So here's 12 o'clock. Here's my bypass signal. It'd be better just to go further back on the knob and then, bring it up if you want to boost. So, according to the Wampler mods, if you also change this resistor, I believe it's R52, you also slightly boost the mids. Now, I always found the Boss HM2 in the realm of fuzz, distortion, and its own thing. But I kind of like the idea of an overdrive that has a little more mid presence. So if I use the HM2 here with my Jackson Audio Broken Arrow with the green boost setting, which is a mid boost, I think it always sounds amazing. So we might get a sound. So we might get a sound like this. Boost off. It'd be nice to have a little more mids, and you can always reverse it. Just swap out the capacitor, just swap out the resistor back to stock. It's a 3.3K resistor. I'm gonna bring it up to about around 5K, maybe underneath 4.7K, 4K7 ohms of resistance. All right, guys, so let's go back to the bench, do that mod, and come back. Here we go. All right, so now we're back, guys. I swapped out the 3.3K resistor for a 4.7K resistor. This is gonna bring up the overall level so we can dial it back a little bit more or push it forward for more of a boost. So that way we try to get the center of the knob to be about unity. And when you do this as well, according to the Wampler mods, like I said, you can boost the mids a little bit, a little smidge. So, all right, so let's hear it in bypass. All right, here we go. right, so first impression, a little bit more noise because we did bring up the overall level. That's expected. The mids are subtle, but they're there. I feel like there's less high to mid, there's less high to low breakup in terms of these low notes I'm holding. The mids that are coming through are a little bit more lower and higher in a weird way. So I'm liking the higher end of the EQ color spectrum a little bit more, and the output is I'd probably say about 20% better. I only went by incremental 1.4K jump from 3.3K to 4.7K, but I think I'm gonna take it back to 3.3K. But this is just for scientific. But this is for science, guys. Science here at the Pedalhead Show. All right, let's switch it back to 3.3K. I liked it with the tube screamer pedal. That's what you heard when I just started playing there. But as soon as I turned it off, the mids kind of got in the way between the scoop of the low and the high. So as you heard when I turned it off, it basically sounded like one big shelved EQ that had no dynamic relief. So let's take it back, put it at 3.3K. And the next mod we're going to do is changing out one capacitor from 1 unifarad to 0.033 unifarad. It's going to add more bass presence and take care of a little bit of the fuzziness on the low end. Here we go. Hey, welcome back, guitar pedal fanatics. So I swapped out C12 for a 0.033 unifarad film capacitor. Now, sometimes when you swap electrolytics for film, you kind of either can get noise or not at all, and you actually get better performance because film has better tolerance, only a 5% tolerance, where electrolytics have a 10% tolerance. So for better tone and quieter noise, using film is more your go-to. But what this modification is supposed to do is basically help with the low end not become so fuzzy. Basically, not allowing so much low end to get into one of the op-amp stages. So you can kind of control how much more lows are being added by using the EQ and avoid that fuzziness. But we all have to agree that the HM2 is known for that high and low fuzziness. But this is just one of the mods that I'm following on the Wampler mods. They'll all be in the description below for you to follow. And this is just for a reference. So here's our bypass signal. Here we go. So all of a sudden, it kind of sounds more like a DS1 on steroids, honestly. And, as you hear, there's some noise. I think after I swapped out the R52 for a bigger size resistor, I think we have a little bit more noise. I'm not too sure. But still not as much noise as this pedal had before we swapped out all the electrolytics. And now with this modification to C12, it really becomes more like your usual distortion pedal. You can get some of that low bass push if you bring up the bass a little bit. Let's try that. A lot more clear breakup. It kind of sustains your guitar sound a little bit more without getting too muffled and bushy, I guess. What I always found about the HM2 is that it only ever works with a clean amp. I can't ever have it work with a dirty amp. If I have a dirty setting or a high gain amp, if I put the HM2 in front of it, it just becomes this big muffled mess. But after doing this modification with C12 from 1 microfarad to 0.033, kind of lets the grit of the HM2 come through on a high gain amp. Let's try that. Here I have a setting in the Helix that uses a JCM 800 and a PRS style amp. Just had to play that riff. I just had to. All right, so now we don't need to add any more gain, so we can reduce that, and we're going to leave the highs where they are to get that, HM2 grit, and we're going to put the bass pretty low, and we're going to see if we can add that HM2 gnarliness or chainsaw to this already high gain amp. And obviously using an HM2 on a high gain amp, you will get a higher noise floor. That's just expected. But as you heard with the Boss HM2 with this mod, it like the lows were accentuated because the EQ comes after all the clipping, but it just kept sustained in a nicer way. It kind of got rid of the HM2 feel on the higher notes, like on the tenor side of the string. So the G, B, E string was just, they just sound like they're going through another overdrive, kind of like an ST1 style overdrive. But then as soon as you got to the low strings, it was like, it just got that real gnarly, chainsaw-esque sound. But I guess in order to get the real HM2 tone, you gotta have the low end fuzzy feeling of the bass being clipped really hard, as long as the highs and both of them together. So I wish I could say I wanted to keep this pedal with this mod, but I'm gonna have to switch it back to the 1UF electrolytic capacitor. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Check out some more mods you can do to your Boss HM2 in the description below. I'll leave a link to the Boss HM2 service manual so you can follow along with that to understand where certain parts are on your board. Each PCB board is labeled C1, D1 with all the components there. But in order to really follow it, you want to make sure you're referencing the service manual. Hope you guys learned a lot today. I know I sure did. Thank you so much for watching the Pedalhead Show. Please remember to like, subscribe, share with your friends. Hope I see you again in the next episode
of the Pedalhead Show.
See ya.